there's something about that weaving together of the self and the other, the many parts of the self, the self in the community, the self in the sense of the sort of transcendent or personal self, and the self in history, the mortal self. I'm going to try to look at different poems that are involved with that activity, and also with the sense that that self is woven together by certain kinds of actions, moral, aesthetic, emotional, and spiritual. This poem from a book titled Erosion is titled At Luca Signorelli's Resurrection of the Body. It takes place in the town of Orvieto in front of Signorelli's fresco. Signorelli was not a great painter, but he preceded Michelangelo and studied anatomy with enormous precision and made possible much of what then Michelangelo and others were capable of drawing, partly because he spent a great deal of time cutting open the human body to look inside in order to ascertain how the outside should be rendered. There's a true story in here, or at least true in the sense that it's a story told me by my favorite gossip columnists, Will and Ariel Durant. I think they probably have as much truth as Vasari or anybody else. All fiction. You have to imagine that it's the day of judgment, and that the souls are coming down in spirit form, and the bones are coming up in their form, and they're merging at eye level and recoalescing in order to be judged. See how they hurry to enter their bodies, these spirits. Is it better, flesh, that they should hurry so? From above, the green-winged angels blare down trumpets and light, but they don't care. They hurry to congregate. They hurry into speech until it's a marketplace. It is humanity. But still, we wonder in the chancel of the dark cathedral, is it better back? The artist has tried to make it so. Each tendon they press to re-enter is perfect. But is it perfection thereafter, pulling themselves up through the soil into the weightedness, the color, into the eye of the painter? Outside, it is 1500. All round the cathedral streets hurry to open through the wild silver grasses. The men and women on the cathedral wall do not know how, having come this far, to stop their hurrying. They amble off in groups, in couples. Soon some are clothed. There is distance. There is perspective. Standing below them in the church in Orvieto, how can we tell them to be stern and brazen and slow, that there is no entrance, only entering? They keep on arriving, wanting names, wanting happiness. In his studio, Luca Signorelli, in the name of God and science and the believable, broke into the body, studying arrival. But the wall of the flesh opens endlessly, its vanishing point so deep and receding we have yet to find it, to have it stop us. So he cut deeper.
I'm going to begin by asking a question that I've always wanted to ask a poet. People are always asking poets about the difficulty of their own work, and obviously it's not difficult to them. So it's almost a ridiculous question. What I want to ask is what it feels like to find your work difficult and even to find yourself from time to time misunderstood.
I don't find my work difficult. I think I make it as clear as it can be. But I do think that the work of most poets whom I admire requires an apprenticeship to the language of that particular poet. If you were to read a few anthologized poems by Emily Dickinson, unless they were the sort of easy Dickinson poems, you'd be lost. Same is true of Berriman or Eliot or a great many poets, Stevens. And not that I would rank my work in any relation to theirs, but the fact is that we tend to live in an anthology in a culture that privileges the anthology or the short selection, and so the idea of becoming acquainted with the collected works of a certain poet is not often the way people approach poetry. And it seems to me that it's like learning a language. If you read Emily Dickinson from start to finish, the vocabulary, the obsessive imagery, the way of proceeding develops into a language, and by the end of it, you never need to read a single essay on Emily Dickinson, not that it would hurt, but Emily Dickinson will unfold for you.
Hurts.
Sometimes hurts. But Emily Dickinson will unfold for you completely. And prior to our period in history, I think people really only became acquainted with poets through a sort of complete relationship with the work. A poet like John Ashbery seems very difficult until you read all of the work that's available, and all of a sudden one of the most difficult poets in the language is speaking in the language that seems most natural to you, for him to be saying those things. And so, first of all, it's always a matter of if there's enough work available and if people want to attend to it, it's a language and it will speak to you. In fragments, it's going to be more difficult. Besides that, I think the world is... I think one of the virtues of poetry is that it allows us to talk about things that can't be talked about in any other way. And although it is written in words, and the reading habits that we tend to be comfortable with when we confront words tend to be reading habits that privilege logic and continuity and certain kinds of narrative or expositional clarity that we attach to prose, journalistic prose, nonfiction, fiction. A poem is something made out of words, but which is proceeding often through other means, association, uses of illogic that are more like the kind of logic that you encounter in dream structures, ways, what Octavio Paz called attempts to approach ever more naked and ancient states.